In the ancient Roman period, the serpent has been worshipped as a symbol of primal life force, destruction and rebirth, the origin of the cosmos, eternal life itself. The sacred power of the serpent is quietly woven into the fabric of Japanese mythology and culture. Hello everyone, today we're gonna explore the hidden tradition of snake worship in Japanese history and mythology. Across the ancient world, snakes were revered as sacred beings. Based on the writings of Japanese folklorist Hiroko Yoshino sensei, we'll take a deep dive into the fascinating world of Japanese snake folklore. And please keep in mind, this is just one interpretation, like one theory among many. This time, we'll be unraveling a historical mystery through the lens of folklore studies. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. Let's uncover the hidden secrets of snake worship in Japanese history. According to folklorist Yoshino sensei, while serpents are commonly known as water gods in Japan, their fundamental role is as ancestral gods and even cosmic gods. The relationship between humans and the serpents dates back to the dawn of time. Across the world's myths and legends, snakes have always held their special and sacred power. For example, in Chinese mythology, the twin creator gods of heaven and earth are Fuxi and Nuwa, with human faces and serpent bodies. They are considered the ancestral beings of humankind. While in contrast, Christianity portrays the serpent as a symbol of evil, the one who brought about original sin. Since ancient times, we have held a complex relationship with serpents, worshipping them, fearing them, and holding them in awe. Well, actually, this fear may reach back tens of millions of years, rooted deep within the most ancient parts of the human brain. According to Professor Kawai, Nagaya University, about 65 million years ago, our primate ancestors began living in trees. At that time, the only predators capable of hunting tree-dwelling monkeys or snakes. As a result, the primate brain developed a special region highly sensitive to snakes, allowing early humans to instantly detect danger and respond with fear. This adaptation may have been crucial for survival. In other words, our fear and reverence toward snakes may be an innate response, a deep-rooted instinct shaped by millions of years of evolution. And of course, Japanese people are no exception. Snake worship has existed in Japan since the distant days of Jomon period. However, around the 5th century, the ancient Chinese philosophy of yin-yang and the 5 elements was introduced to Japan. This profound system of thought began to structure and organize Japanese culture. When the leader of Yamato court, Yamato Chote, adopted the name Tenno Taite, the North Star God, Japan's native rituals were gradually reshaped to align with these imported ideals. Well, although the yin-yang and the 5 elements philosophy was highly developed, its introduction caused older Japanese rituals and the beliefs to fade into the background. Despite these changes, Japan's ancient culture and spiritual traditions, carried on for thousands of years, still form the foundation of Japanese culture today and live on vividly within its mythology. Then one part of that legacy is snake worship. So before we dive deeper into the mysteries of serpent belief in Japan, let's first take a look at the nature of snakes themselves and how ancient Japanese people perceived, feared, and revered them. What makes snakes feel so strange and unsettling to us? Firstly, it's the fact that they have no limbs. Losing their limbs was actually a highly efficient evolutionary adaptation when hunting prey like mice or frogs hidden in narrow burrows. Arms and legs would only get in the way. But what truly demands our attention is the snake's head. The shape of snakes, especially its head, was seen by ancient people as a phallic symbol, representing masculinity and the force of life. Snakes also coil their bodies into a cone-like shape, with the head positioned at the very top. This posture helped them prepare for threats from any direction. Such a unique and composed stance is found only in snakes. So ancient Japanese people likely saw this form and were reminded of mountains. One more thing that makes snakes special is the way they shed their skin. In cultures around the world, the shedding was seen as a sign of eternal life and rebirth. So when ancient people saw a snake looking fresh and shiny, as if it had been born again, they probably felt there was something sacred about it. In Japan's Jomon period, Jomon potteries featuring snake-like designs have been discovered, expressing a raw and a primitive sense of life and energy. Some of these artifacts even use the shape of snake's head as a phallic symbol. From what we can see in these unearthed pieces, it seemed that in ancient Japan, the snake's head was seen as a symbol of male power and vitality. In both Western and Eastern ancient cultures, male strength and the mystery of childbirth were objects of reverence and sometimes fear. But as Japan entered the Yayoi period, the cultural role of the snake began to change. It's not easy to draw a clear line between the Jomon and the Yayoi periods. In fact, rice farming had already begun during the late Jomon era. Compared to the bold and wild designs of Jomon pottery, Yayoi pottery feels like calmer and more refined. In the Yayoi period, we no longer see the dynamic, life-filled snake motifs that appeared in earlier times. Even so, the serpent, the ruler of the mountains and the forests, didn't disappear. It lived on through the Yayoi period, taking on new shapes and new meanings. To put it simply, the snake, once connected with the raw life force and seen as a symbol of a male energy or seed god, gradually took a new role, a guardian of rice, fertility, and the harvest. But at its core, the belief in the snake was still all about life energy. So now, let's talk about how and why this change happened. In the Yayoi period, when rice farming had become widespread, one of the biggest threats to crops was wild mice. And of course, the natural enemy of mice is the snake. So it's easy to imagine the snakes came to be seen as protectors of rice, fields, and a harvest. The old belief in the snake as a source of primal life force was gradually joined by a new role, the snake as a guardian of grain and agriculture. So what's important to remember is this. Whether it's through the phallic image or through the grain god, both are really about the same thing, the power of life and fertility. So while the form of snake symbolism may have changed, its core meaning has remained surprisingly consistent. Up to this point, we will look at the snake as a symbol of life force. So from here on, let's talk about the unique qualities of the snake itself and how they connect to ancient Japanese beliefs. Just like the ancient Japanese saw the snake as a symbol of life, they also saw its strange, mysterious body as something that resembled parts of the nature. In the yin-yang and five elements philosophy, there was a system called the five creatures, Gochu. Within that system, the snake was believed to have the qualities of the wood element, which led people to associate it with the tree as well. One well-known example is the kaji tree, kajinoki, probably in English, paper mulberry. The kaji leaf appears as the shinmon, like sacred symbol of Suwa Taisha, and that shrine worships snake gods. Suwa Taisha is one of the oldest shrines in Japan, and it's also worshipped as a god of war. I will talk about the connection between Suwa Taisha and the snakes later on, but what's important to know is that this shrine's religious roots run deep, possibly stretching all the way back to the Jomon period. While it's often said that the shrine's shinmon was adapted by the Genji clan in the late Heian period, some researchers believe that the symbol itself has much older origins. According to Professor Yoshino, the kanji character for kaji can be broken down into two parts. The left side meaning tree represents a snake, and the right side meaning tail symbolizes the snake's body. And even long before it got a history, the people of the Suwa region worship the serpent. In addition to kaji, Another tree once regarded as sacred was the biro palm. Its fan-shaped leaves were used in imperial ceremonies, such as the emperor's enthronement scrolls, and even as roofing for noble families. Because its form, the biro tree was also thought to resemble a snake. In the Heian period, nobles even had ox carts decorated with biro palm fibers called biroge no kuruma. Just like trees were linked to snakes, mountains had a strong connection too. In ancient Japan, mountains were sacred and worshipped as gods in their own right. So when a people saw a coiled snake, they were reminded of the shape and the presence of a mountain. One ritual that draws attention to this symbolic link between snakes and the mountains is the Oimi Matsuri, a sacred ceremony passed down at the Sada Shrine, one of the oldest shrines in the Izumo region. Sada Shrine enshrines a hinogi ogi, like a sacred cypress fan, as it's a shintai. Shintai is an object that represents the presence of the gods. So its shimon, sacred symbol, also features a fan design. During the Oimi festival at the Sada Shrine, it is said that the dragon serpent appears as a messenger of the gods. Belief in this dragon serpent is found throughout the entire Izumo region. Actually, it is said to be a sea snake with a black back, a yellow belly, and a sacred fan-shaped crest on its tail. And in the old illustration of the dragon serpent passed down at the Sada Shrine, it is depicted in a coiled and a cone-like shape. It's important to note that the coiled cone-shaped posture of the snake was seen as its proper and sacred form, especially in sacred Shinto rituals. To ancient Japanese people, this cone-like shape reminded them of a sacred mountain. And when talking about snake worship in Japan, one of the most important things to know is an old Japanese word for snake, kaka. The word kaka, an old Japanese term for snake, still lingers in ancient ritual language, old songs, and the regional dialects across Japan. The first clue to unlocking the mystery of kaka can be found in the bright red fruit of the hozuki, or Japanese lantern plant. In Japanese, it's written as Oni no Hi, meaning demon's light. However, its ancient name was Kagachi. The people who created or passed down Japan's earliest myths saw the glowing fruit as the eyes of a radiant divine serpent. In the Kojiki, Japan's oldest chronicle, the giant eight-headed and eight-tailed serpent, Yamata-no-Orochi, is described this way. Its eyes shone like a bright red kagachi, and it had one body, with 8 heads and 8 tails. In the accompanying notes, it explains, the term akakagachi here refers to what we now call hozuki, the Japanese lantern plant. According to Wamyosho, a dictionary from the mid-Heian period, the word yamakagachi was used to refer to a large serpent. The ending chi in kagachi also appears in other ancient snake-related words, like mizuchi, a water serpent, and the orochi, a giant serpent. In these cases, chi is believed to refer to serpents, and may also have an award for spiritual power. Interestingly, even the word kakashi, meaning scarecrow, contains the old root kaka, subtly linking it back to serpent symbolism. One possible origin of the word kakashi can be found in the Kojiki, Japan's oldest mythological chronicle. To summarize the relevant passage, there is a deity called Sohodo, who cannot move his feet to go anywhere, but is said to know everything about the world. In ancient times, this god came to be known as the Kakashi. While the exact origin of the word Kakashi is still unclear, but if we break down the word literally, it could mean one who watches over the mountain or one who thinks of the mountain. In other words, the Kakashi may be something that comes from the mountain, a presence that remembers it, protects it, or perhaps even belongs to it. Since ancient times, snakes have been seen as mountain gods. In fact, one of the traditional names for a serpent is Yamakagashi, means mountain snake. So this suggests the true nature of the Kakashi. The scarecrow believed to come from the mountains to guard the rice fields is also linked to the serpent. The reason snakes become gods of the fields is actually pretty simple. People associated their shape with male fertility, and thus with the seed deities, gods of grain and harvest. Also, snakes eat field mice, which were the greatest threat to crops. So naturally, snakes came to be seen as the perfect protectors of the fields. When I first heard this idea, that even the scarecrow might be connected to the serpent, I was honestly a little shocked. There are many theories about the origin of the Kakashi. One theory says that people who were born with leg deformities and couldn't walk were seen as mysterious and even worshipped like gods. But serpent worship in Japan dates all the way back to the Jomon period, so there's no doubt that these beliefs go way back. The word kaka also shows up in other places. For example, in Norito, the ancient Shinto text recited during sacred festivals. These chants express wishes for a good harvest, protection from misfortune, and peace in daily life. The connection between snakes and Norito is actually really fascinating, but it's a deep topic, so I'll just give you the short version here. In short, it's based on the image of a snake swallowing its prey whole. Using that metaphor, people would channel the snake's spiritual power to symbolically consume or swallow away all evil and misfortune. Some scholars even say this kind of ritual was one of Japan's oldest forms of jujutsu, like spiritual magic or ancient spell work. The word kaka also appears in other ancient texts like the Fudoki, regional echoes of culture and geography compiled in the 8th century, and the Manyoshu, Japan's oldest collection of poetry. But I'm gonna skip over those for now. There's just too much to cover. So maybe I'll talk about them in another video someday. So next, let's take a closer look at the connection between serpents and Japanese mythology. Some of the most well-known snakes in Japanese mythology include Yamata-no-Orochi, the serpent of Mount Miwa, Miwayama no Shinja, and Toyotama-hime, a daughter of the sea god. These serpents play an important role in mythological storytelling, reflecting deep cultural themes of nature, divinity, and transformation. Each of these figures reveals how deeply snakes were tied to spiritual power and the relationship between humans and the divine in Japan's oldest stories. In the legend of Yamata-no-Orochi, the sacred sword, Ame no Murakumo no Tsurugi, later known as Kusanagi no Tsurugi, emerged from within the serpent's tail after the slaying. This sword is said to embody the spirit of the serpent itself. Kusanagi is one of the 3 sacred treasures of Japan, or Sanshu no Jingi, a set of imperial regalia that represent the divine authority of the emperor, Tenno. It symbolizes the right to rule and a deep connection between the imperial line and the gods. The fact that such a sword, born from a serpent, serves as the very emblem of imperial power reflects just how deeply rooted serpent worship was in ancient Japan. According to the Kojiki, Toyotama-hime took the form of a serpent when she gave birth to Ugayafuki Awasetsu no Mikoto. He will later father Jimmu Tenno, the first emperor of Japan, with Toyotama's younger sister Tamayori-hime. So, if Toyotama-hime was indeed a dragon or a serpent, then it's likely that her sister Tamayori-hime shared the same divine form. This myth not only links the emperor bloodline to the gods, but also to the serpent, a symbol of life, power, and transformation. The fact that mother of Japan's first emperor was a dragon serpent goddess can be seen as a powerful reflection of ancient Japan's deep-rooted serpent worship. Mount Miwa, one of the most sacred mountains in early Japan's belief, was said to be home to Miwa divine serpent, Miwayama no Shinja. Given the link between snakes and the mountains, it's no surprise that the guardians of sacred mountains would appear as serpents. As for the 3 sacred treasures, if the sword, Ame no Murakumo no Tsurugi, was found inside the tail of Yamata-no-Orochi, then it's possible the other 2 treasures correspond to different parts of the serpent's body. For example, considering the description of Orochi's eyes, and the myth that tells how Amaterasu was born from the left eye of Izanagi, the Yata no Kagami, might be symbolically linked to the head and eyes of the serpent. The Yasakani no Magatama also carries mythological messages deeply tied to the serpent. Some scholars believe that the three sacred treasures also symbolize the three noble children, Amaterasu, Sano, and Tsukuyomi. It's a fascinating topic, so I like to cover it in detail next time. And now, for the final part, let's take a look at Mishaguji, a mysterious god, often seen as one of the purest examples of Japan's earliest native faith. Before we dive into Mishaguji, let's first talk about two deities worshipped in Suwa, Take Minakata no Kami, a serpent god, and Moriya no Kami, a native god of the region. We'll also touch on a scene from Japanese mythology known as the arrival of the Suwa Myojin. In Daikojiki, there is a famous episode known as the transfer of the land, Kuniyuzuri. The story began when Okuni-nishi, father of Take Minakata no Kami, surrendered his realm to the heavenly grandson of the sun goddess Amaterasu. After losing in this transfer of the land, Take Minakata traveled to the land of Suwa. There he clashed with the native deity Moriya no Kami. Moriya fought with an iron ring, while Take Minakata no Kami wielded a branch of Wisteria. In the end, Take Minakata no Kami emerged victorious. This event came to be remembered as the arrival of Suwa Myojin. At a first glance, it seems obvious that iron would be stronger than a plant, but the Wisteria branch was likely a symbol of Suwa Myojin himself, as he is believed to take the form of a serpent. After his victory, Suwa Myojin came to rule over the land. The Ohori, the high priest of Suwa Shrine, was regarded as Arahitogami, a living deity. And because Suwa Myojin has the attributes of a serpent god, the crest of Suwa Shrine featured the leaf of the kazi tree. In Daikojiki, this episode is recorded as follows. Take Minakata refused to surrender the land, but was eventually defeated. He fled to distant Suwa, where he settled and became enriched as its god. However, one local Suwa tradition tells a different story. In this version, Suwa was already home to the native deity Moriya no Kami, who fought against the invading Myojin from Izumo. Moriya was defeated and swore allegiance to the Myojin. So this suggests that the tale may reflect an actual conflict between the Izumo people and the native people of Suwa. While the Kojiki and the Suwa's local traditions differ in some details, both describe a conflict that ended with a new order in the region. The Ohori, high priest of Suwa Myojin, came to rule the land, while the Moriya clan served only in religious affairs as the Jinchokan, or chief ritual officers. This arrangement became known as the dual Suwa-Moriya system, starting a new political and spiritual structure in Suwa. In this system, the Suwa clan held a political authority as chieftains, while the Moriya clan maintained a control over the sacred rites. And in the rituals of Suwa, there is yet another important deity, Mishaguji. In one old Suwa ritual, the Jinchokan, the Moriya clan leader, would begin by calling down the god Mishaguji. In other words, the Moriya's original deity was Mishaguji. This made him the true native god of Suwa. According to Dr. Nogiku Imai, a researcher specializing in ancient Suwa and the Mishaguji priesthood, the name Mishaguji has been written in many different ways over the centuries. There's no single definitive character to represent this deity, only these very phonetic renderings, and that's part of the mystery. So the truth of Mishaguji still remains an enigma. We don't know the true nature of the god or the origin of the name itself. However, despite being shrouded in mystery, Mishaguji remains at the very heart of Suwa's religious festivals. One theory says Mishaguji is a stone god, since one of the sacred objects worshipped at Suwa Shrine is a stone. Another sees it as a tree god, because trees play an important role in the Suwa region. The famous folklorist Kunio Yanagita suggested that Mishaguji is a god of boundaries, originally a marker that stood between the indigenous people and the Yamato people, later defined over time. Now then, as we begin to unravel the mystery of Mishaguji, let me start with a conclusion. According to Professor Yoshino and several other folklorists, Mishaguji is also thought to be an ancient deity whose origins lie in the serpent and in primal life force. So let's work our way toward that conclusion step by step. The first thing we should look at is the age of the sites where Mishaguji was worshipped. Most of Suwa's sacred sites are located on ruins dating back to the Middle Jomon period and the Yayoi period, and these were once places where rice cultivation took place. Here we can see a clear chain of relationships: rice as the staple crop, the rats that threatened it, and the serpents that preyed upon those rats. Furthermore, in the surrounding area, there are large sacred trees, and beneath them, small shrines and shrine sekibo, like stone phalluses, thought to represent the Shinto of the Mishaguji. Archaeologists have also found evidence that people in ancient Suwa worshipped the serpents. One example is a clay figurine of a woman with her snake resting on her head. In ancient times, the people of Suwa practiced phallic worship as a symbol of a primal life force. Over time, this evolved into the veneration of stone phalluses and the serpents. Traces of this can still be seen today at Suwa Taisha, where sacred trees linked to dragon and the serpent worship are revered. And perhaps the strongest proof of this serpent faith is a ritual still held at the shrine, the Kawazugari Shinji, I think in English, frog hat ceremony. The Kawazugari Shinji takes place on New Year's Day. In this ritual, the chief priest of Suwa digs into the riverbed near Suwa Shrine and catches several frogs. He then shoots them with arrows and offers them as a sacrifice to the god of Suwa. Finally, the priest recites Norito, asking for peace in the nation and a bountiful harvest. The origins of this ceremony are unclear, and the true reason why frogs are offered remains a mystery. But in Japanese tradition, frogs have long been seen as prey for serpents, so the idea of offering frogs to the serpent god makes perfect sense. As Dr. Imai pointed out, Mishaguji has many different written forms, but if you drop the honorific prefix mi, what remains is shakuji or shakuchi. So no matter which written form is used, this corpore shakuji always remains. That means by uncovering the meaning of this central word, shakuchi, we can get closer to the answer. And here's the conclusion. Shakuchi can be interpreted as shaku, meaning red, and the chi meaning serpent. So the word can be understood as the red serpent. In ancient Japan, the color red held special significance. One of the oldest records of Japanese history, the Gishi Wajinden, notes that the Wa people like to paint their bodies with red pigment. Even the first emperor, Jinmu Tenno, is said to have made a sacred vessel for ritual sake from the red clay of Mount Ame no Kaguyama, and through this ritual, he gained a victory in battle. In myth as well, the great serpent, Yamata-no-Orochi, is often described with the red eyes and the red belly. Later in the Edo period, Suwa Shrine records, it is written that the sacred messengers of Mishaguji, serving as a Yorishido, were dressed in red garments. Amaterasu, the ancestral goddess of the imperial family and the highest deity in Japanese mythology, is closely associated with the sun, and the red has been a special symbol of the sun. For this reason, the image of the red serpent carried the strongest divine power in Japan. So then, to sum up the conclusion, the word Mishaguji comes from shakuchi, meaning red serpent, by adding the honorific mi. Over time, this evolved into Mishaguchi or Mishaguji. Of course, this is only one hypothesis, but the origins of Mishaguji worship are extremely old, reaching back to the Jomon period. And within these primal form of worship, the serpent, a symbol of life force, played one of the most important roles. That's the end of today's story, Hidden Snake Worship in Japanese History. I hope you enjoyed it. Listening to stories of history and ancient methods always sparks my curiosity and a sense of wonder. And I usually make videos in Japanese on a wide range of topics. But as for Japan's history and culture, I like to keep sharing them in English as well. And if you do like, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. ご視聴ありがとうございました。